to talk a little bit about the patient perspective as it applies to CRISPR engineered stem cell research. I cover a lot on cell and gene, patient centricity, the patient perspective, that type of thing. What is the patient perspective on CRISPR engineered stem cell therapies? How does it affect the patient? How has it improved over time? And what can patients who have these diseases expect going forward in the very near future?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I mean, I think, one of the reasons that I got into cell and gene therapy is because of the potential for immediate patient impact. So, unlike a traditional drug development life cycle, which takes, 10 to 20 years before you have something commercially approved, within the context of cell and gene therapies, that timeline is really much shorter. Having been involved with CAR Ts and other innovative platforms, that's one of the attractive aspects there. So getting back to your question about gene-edited hematopoietic stem cells, I think the trial that's probably the most advanced is the CRISPR Therapeutics trial that I mentioned, where they've treated patients with sickle cell and beta thalassemia with these gene-edited hematopoietic stem cells. So the question becomes, what was the lifestyle of these patients before the therapy, and how has it changed after the therapy? So before the therapy, clinical management of sickle cell is pretty difficult. I mean, these patients would have bleeding events. They would need to go to the hospital on a regular basis to get transfusions of red blood cells. So it was a very difficult chronic lifestyle disease. Now, in these handful of patients that have been treated with CRISPR-edited hematopoietic stem cells, you see a complete shift in terms of they're able to live a more normal life. A majority of them don't need to go to the hospital on a regular basis. That they're no longer transfusion dependent, so they don't need that infusion of red blood cells. So I think from just a lifestyle perspective, for a patient, although the initial treatment regimen is a bit challenging because, they're taking the stem cells from the patient and then they're genetically editing the stem cells, but in parallel, they're lymphodepleting the patient. So in order to infuse the stem cell back, you need to eliminate the already existing white blood cells in the patient's body. And so that's a pretty difficult process, what we call the conditioning regimen. So the patient does have to go through quite a bit of difficulty initially during the treatment regimen. They have to be conditioned, which is a pretty painful process. That you have to harvest the stem cells from their body. Then you have to genetically edit the stem cells and infuse them back. So that initial upfront, we're asking quite a bit from patients. But I think the potential long-term payoff could potentially be worth it because these patients no longer have a chronic disease. They could potentially be cured of this disease that really limits their mobility. And I think, that'll be applicable for all of the diseases that CRISPR, goes after, or gene editing in general. These are going to be applications that could be potentially curative and really make a major change in terms of the patient's overall lifestyle and quality of life.